Assalamu alaikum. Good afternoon, everyone. Great privilege and honor to be moderating this distinguished panel. The topic is about Generation Alpha. And I have to admit, when I first saw the term, I didn't know exactly what it meant. But I guessed. You know, it's Generation Y, Generation Z, and then I go to the Greek alphabet. So the definition, if we look it up, is babies who are born after 2010. And what is surprising to me is that every week there's 2.8 million Generation Alpha born, every week. So in a decade or so, this group will be the largest group. It will be like 2 billion people of the world's population. So this is very, very important. Now what's most interesting is this generation, they are being born into a very different world than the world that we were born into. Their experiences are very different. They are very digitally oriented, right? They never knew the world without a smartphone, for example. And they are very attuned to, for example, sustainability. I was involved in another field like this. And specifically in terms of education, they also expect a different thing. You know, I'm a professor, right? So I'm used to lectures, you know, you prepare notes. Today, you can have education on your smartphone. And I think this generation expects sort of that kind of delivery, that kind of personalization of education. So today on the panel, we have three really leaders in a sector that are related to the topic I just mentioned. We have people in education, from the public sector in UN, and also from the private sector, okay? So the format, you know, I was told, is that I will now go around and give a very, very quick introduction to the panel. Their bio is much longer and deserves longer introduction, but we'd rather preserve the time for the discussion. I would then ask each one of you a specific question to begin with. Then hopefully we'll have enough time to get another question in, you know, if possible. Okay, I'm watching the time, okay? So let's get to it. So to my left is Andy Bird. He is the CEO of Pearson. In case you don't know, Pearson is one of the oldest sort of learning company in the world, okay? So they're getting into digital business, as I mentioned. To his left is Kelly Clemens. She is now the Deputy High Commissioner, the United Nations High Commissioner for Refugees, based in Geneva, I found out, okay? Obviously, refugees also need education. Many of them are Generation Alpha. How do we deal with them? Very different than people born into, as I say, Beverly Hills, for example, right? Very different. To Kelly's left is Eugene Williamson, who's the CEO of PepsiCo for Africa, Middle East, and South Asia. And we all know PepsiCo, okay? It's not just Pepsi-Cola. I mean, there's a big conglomerate. So I don't think I want to use more time to introduce that. So that's a short introduction. So let me start with Andy. So, you know, Pearson, as I said, is one of the largest learning companies, right, in the world. It's global. You produce material, you publish them, you use the digital format. In a way, you are responsible for shaping the future of education. So how is Pearson adapting to this changing landscape of education that I described earlier, particularly in the context of technology-driven learning and new technology like AI, artificial intelligence? What role will it play in addressing the global challenges in education, access, and also quality? Please.
Thank you. Firstly, it's a great honor and privilege to be here with you this afternoon. 1.8 seconds. Do you know what that refers to? How long it takes TikTok's algorithm to figure out whether or not it's worth promoting your post. So one of the things that are really interesting to us as the world's leading learning company as we produce content and publish content is not only the format, but also the form and the media in which this content is being developed in an age where multitasking is being taken to an extreme level, where this next generation alpha are going to grow up with devices that we are yet to be able to think about, that are going to be powered by generative AI, something that is at the heart of what we're doing already. And what we're finding with, particularly with generative AI as it works into technology is, and isn't it amazing, 12 months ago, most of us hadn't heard of it. The greatest marketing ploy ever, ChatGPT, let's give it 0 to 100 million users, faster than anything else. And one of the things we found, and what is fundamental to Pearson, is trust. And that's what children through adults expect from our company, and something we focus on a lot. And these early days of generative AI, I describe the various large language learning models as a bit like a bratty teenager, in terms of they're always right, even when they're wrong. And that's very important when it comes to education, because truth and facts really matter, particularly in such a fast-evolving world that we live in, and that this generation are going to occupy. So we've been doing a lot of research and using a lot of our own data sets. We're very fortunate to have some very high-quality proprietary data sets. And we were feeding some of these large language models with various examples from Campbell's biology. Any biology students out there will know of Campbell's biology? And we fed a question into 4 separate large language models, and they all came back with the same answer. The trouble is, it was the wrong answer. Because there's a lot of noise in the system. So I think whilst everyone justifiably is very excited about, and we are, about the opportunity for generative AI, we want to approach this cautiously and carefully, and we think if we do that and ally it with all the other technological innovations, then the future is going to be very, very bright for this generation.
Thank you. I just want to add something. I work in AI myself when I was still active. I think today is such a frenzy that everybody thinks AI can solve all problems.
Yeah.
Because if you read the output of ChatGPT, it reads like written by better than most human can write. But the content is not always right. That's why you're saying.
Correct.
So we have to be a little careful.
Yeah, we've been using AI for 20 years, and it's only now that it's become sort of the buzzword. And it does come with a very, very large health warning when it comes to education. And I think that is where we can play a very important role.
Okay, let me move to Kelly. So as Deputy High Commissioner of the UN for Refugees, you bring extensive expertise in addressing the complex challenges of refugee education and displacement. So what are the main challenges in ensuring quality education for displaced children, particularly in the resource-constrained and conflict-affected settings that we find ourselves facing today? And can you help develop a roadmap for addressing the basic lack of digital connectivity for almost half of the world?
All in 3 minutes. Thank you very much, Tony. And thank you, and thanks very much to FII for inviting us. We're really honored to be on this panel with these great distinguished colleagues as well. This is a terrible time in world history. It's a terrible time for those that unfortunately are forced to flee. Conflict, persecution, now climate, a whole variety of factors. And a great many of them are youth and children and school learners, and those that have basically lost everything, picked themselves up, either went to another place in their own country or have crossed a border into another country that is hosting them. And we find now that we have refugees that from primary to secondary to tertiary, they are well below the global averages of their peers. So in primary, for example, we're talking about 65% of refugees are educated. It keeps dropping. 40% for secondary, only 6% for tertiary. This isn't good enough. And all the challenges, you could probably guess what those are. You know, it is picking yourself up, going to a place where you're not necessarily welcome. It can be discrimination. It can be language. It can be a policy that a government or local authorities have put into place that it's only for the local kids. And so these various challenges, of course, are things that we can overcome. We can overcome them, of course, with policy changes, including refugee kids, of course, or those that are displaced. We're talking about overall half of refugee children are out of school. And this is probably the clearest way to be able to invest in a generation, in a future generation. And everywhere that we work around the world, when you talk to parents and you talk to kids, particularly kids of a certain age, what do they tell you that they value most? They want to learn. They want to go into an educational environment as quickly as possible. They want teachers, they want mentors, they want the ability to be able to connect. You mentioned this yourself, Tony, in the opening, in terms of refugees are not different from other children. They want to be able to learn. I can tell you about going to places like Zatri camp in Jordan, and where you see the youth trying to find the Wi-Fi signal to be able to connect, trying to find digital learning, trying to make it possible for refugees to be included in host country and host community schools, and finding a quality education then, for them to protect themselves, for them to be able to allow themselves not to be susceptible to other things, being able to child labor, child marriage, other ways to support families. Education is a key protector of kids, particularly kids that have been forced to flee their homes.
I'm glad the UN is really looking into this. You're doing a great job.
Thank you.
So Eugene, everybody knows about PepsiCo. But you know, you are responsible in particular for the Africa, Middle East, and South Asia region. This is a region of huge population growth, a big part of the Generation Alpha. Now, you and PepsiCo have built, sustainable businesses, but also create a template onto where this Generation Alpha can count on as a strong foundation for a sustainable future. So what innovative public-private partnership does PepsiCo have in place to create alternative learning pathways tailored to support Generation Alpha's diverse talents and interests?
Thank you, Tony, and great to see you again after, I guess, a year and a half when I was at KAUST last. And thank you, FII, for having me on the panel together with my distinguished fellow panelists. So as you said, I look after Africa, Middle East, and South Asia for PepsiCo, which covers about almost 50% of the world population. I was listening to your statistic. So 2.8 million new Generation Alphas being born every single day. And of course, the vast majority is being born in that geography. And so if you look at the next 10 years, more than 90% of the population growth is going to come from Africa, Middle East, and South Asia. On one side, that's great. On the other side, that also creates a lot of challenges as well as responsibilities for companies like ours. Because as we all know, in some parts of Africa, Middle East, and South Asia, it's not that easy for youth to find a job. And I think there's a responsibility for companies like PepsiCo to help create the appropriate skills for youth to be employable. And we're doing that actually in many different markets across AMISA. So let me share with you a couple of examples. So in South Africa, we've created a development fund, which is called Codizo. It's a fund that has in total 600 million rand in the fund, which is focused on two big pillars. One is agriculture, the other one is education. So let's say it's about a 50-50 split. When it comes to education, our focus there is primarily on helping youth acquire both practical skills as well as technical skills and digital skills to ensure that they are employable and help them integrate into the workplace, which in a country like South Africa, where youth unemployment is over 50%, is an absolute imperative. Now, bringing it closer to home here in Saudi Arabia, where, again, 60% of the current population is below the age of 30. And of course, this country is going through a phenomenal transformation. A transformation that we're very proud to be part of, but also a transformation that we want to contribute to. So what are we doing here? We have developed a couple of programs together with other institutions to help youth develop appropriate skills. And so one of those examples would be the Future is Saudi, which is a program that focuses in aggregate on 12,000 young Saudis with the objective of helping them develop the appropriate digital skills, technical skills, and professional as well as leadership skills to be successful, whether it be in private businesses or whether it be in the public sector. And I think that is a great contribution for a company like ours. But of course, we cannot do it by ourselves. So we're partnering with academic institutions, but we're also partnering with other institutions in order to create these programs. Another example here in Saudi would be Tamakani, which we created together with Her Royal Highness Princess Rima, and is a program that specifically focuses on female entrepreneurs. So those are a couple of examples that we've rolled out across different markets.
Thank you. I'm being reminded here that our time is almost up. We have 3 minutes. So I have a second question, but maybe instead of doing that, why don't I just ask each one of you to say a couple of sentences about some additional points you want to make. Okay, so very quick, yeah.
Very, very quick, as I probably overspoke my time. I'm also extremely excited about the opportunity here in the Kingdom in terms of not only the demographics, but the way that the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia can not only shape itself, but also shape the broader region. And I hope and know that we are going to be able to play a large part in that.
Quick, few words.
To follow up on the Jordan example, I want to tell you about a group of girls, youth, that I met last year. It's a group called Tiger. These inspiring girls enjoy reading. The idea is, in this place of 80,000 people, where a large number of them are youth, and girls are the ones that tend to drop out of school or not go back to school. This is a group that leans on each other, that has mentorship. We're aiming to reach 1,200 Syrian refugee girls, and it is a way for them to be able to have the strength and leadership opportunities that when they have other demands that take them out of the classroom, that they can keep going back in. This is what we need to do more of.
Thank you. Eugene.
Yeah.
Very quick.
Very quick. Okay, so I think besides all the technical skills that youth, of course, needs to acquire, I think there's a couple of other elements that are critical, especially in the world in which we live in today. I think it's resilience, agility, and the focus on humanity and compassion. And I think those are also values that we try to instill in our workforce, and values that are very important at PepsiCo.
Thank you. Let me try to conclude in less than 1 minute. So if you did the math, right, 2.8 million in a week, it works out to be, in the time that we have discussed, 17,000 new members of our Generation Alpha has been born. This will tell you how fast this is. But anyway, speaking personally, I'm very encouraged that despite the big challenges that our Generation Alpha faces, that we have leaders in both the private and the public sector who are trying to address that issue. So I think let's leave this panel with a high point of hope for the future. Thank you very much. Let's thank the panelists.
Thank you.
Thank you.